Joining us is Representative Adam Schiff, Democrat of the 28th Congressional District, including Burbank, Glendale, and Pasadena. He's chair of the House Intelligence Committee. He joins us from Washington. Congressman, we know the rationale for impeachment, your rationale, but considering that it doesn't look like you're going to get one Republican vote and may have several Democrats voting against the articles, why wasn't a censure vote considered instead, which would have rebuked the president for his behavior and had a greater chance of being bipartisan?
Well, I'm not going to give up on senators finding their conscience, doing their constitutional duty. What led me to this path, and Conan, as you know, I resisted going down the road to impeachment for a long time, were two things. First, that this most recent misconduct, this effort to shake down the president of Ukraine for help in his re-election campaign, was the most serious misconduct to date. It was one thing when the president, as a candidate, sought to get foreign interference, hey, Russia, if you're listening, hack Hillary's emails. But it was another when, as President of the United States, he could use the full power of that office by withholding military aid to an ally at war with the Russians to get them to announce these sham investigations into, among other things, his political rival. That was the most serious misconduct to date. I don't think a censure adequately contains the horrors of that kind of abuse of power. But it also doesn't provide an adequate remedy in terms of protecting our elections by removing someone who would abuse their office that way. But the other factor is this, Conan. It was the day after Bob Mueller testified that Donald Trump thought the Mueller investigation was finally over. It was the day after that Donald Trump was back on the phone, this time with a new shakedown effort, this directed at Vladimir Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, to get him to intervene in a U.S. election on Trump's behalf. The very day after Mueller testified, that tells me that this president believes that he is unaccountable, can't be prosecuted, can't be impeached. And to have an unethical president like this believe they're beyond the reach of accountability, I think is too dangerous to be allowed to persist.
We're hearing that Senate Republicans will try the case in January. They will hear the arguments from the House managers, I assume you'll be one of them, and from counsel representing the president, and then may not call any witnesses and just vote to exonerate. The House did their job, they will do theirs. Will you be satisfied with that?
No, the senators do need to do their job, and I would say first and foremost the senators need to make sure that during the trial we have the use of all of the documents that the administration has been withholding from Congress. I think the senators are going to be hard-pressed to say, no, we don't want to see the evidence, that we're okay with going along with the White House's effort to obstruct. What I would ask these Republican senators is, will they be comfortable with the precedent that should a Democratic president be elected either in 2020 or thereafter, and refuse any kind of Republican subpoenas for documents, refuse any oversight, refuse to make any witnesses available when Congress is investigating that wrongdoing? Are they going to be comfortable with saying that's perfectly fine, we relinquish our oversight role? Because that will be the impact of that action. If the Republican senators don't want the documentary evidence, don't want to hear from witnesses, they'll be effectively telling this president and future presidents they can be as grievous in their abuse of power. They can commit whatever criminal acts, wrongdoing, misconduct, negligence, and there'll be no accountability. I don't think a senator from either party should embrace that philosophy.
Columnist David Brooks of the New York Times a few weeks ago said impeachment was merited but still a bad idea, that the president will beat it in the Senate, reinforce the bond with his base in key battleground states, lose the popular vote again, but win in the Electoral College, and have 4 years of open field without fear of another impeachment. How big a worry is that for you and your fellow Democrats?
Well, that's quite a dire prediction, but I wish Mr. Brooks were instead urging Republican senators to do their job rather than bemoaning that they won't. Look, I don't know what the political calculus is, and I don't spend my time trying to figure out whether impeachment helps or hurts in a 2020 election. That's not my job. That's not the right question for me to be asking myself. I'm focused on what does the Constitution require here? What does our system of checks and balances require? If we ignore impeachable conduct of this magnitude, and as one of the experts testified during the constitutional law hearing the other day, if this conduct is not impeachable, nothing is, If we basically render that provision of the Constitution moot, it means, as I said before, that future presidents will feel that they can be as free to violate the law or the Constitution as they choose, and there's no repercussion. And on that day, there's a substantial question about whether we continue to be a democracy. As Ben Franklin said when he was asked, what kind of a government do we have? He said, a monarchy or a republic. He said a republic if we can keep it. And the question is, can we keep it? If we're going to tolerate this kind of abuse of power by the President of the United States, willfully not only inviting a foreign power to intervene and help him cheat an election, but withholding hundreds of millions of military aid to that ally, injuring our own national security to make it so, if we're going to permit that kind of conduct and simply say, well, because some of the Republicans won't do their job, we're going to look the other way, then we might as well resign ourselves that we are not the democracy we thought we were.
And finally, the president's defenders have not made this about his actions, but yours. You've received death threats, travel with security, and are routinely now recognized at the airport and on the sidewalk. I assume, regardless of the outcome, you're looking forward to this being over.
Look, I certainly didn't come to Congress to impeach the president, and as I mentioned before, this is a path I resisted until the president's conduct made it inevitable. But I have an important role to play. I have an important responsibility. I'm deeply concerned about the health and the future of our democracy. So I'm going to do what's necessary to fulfill my constitutional oath, my oath to defend the Constitution. And I will take whatever heat comes my way. But I will say this, the attacks on me by the president and others, they're part of the same course of conduct by the president, which is attack and smear anyone who stands up to him. Whether that's a courageous ambassador named Marie Yovanovitch, whether it's a decorated combat veteran like Bill Taylor or Colonel Vindman, whether it is Bob Mueller, who devoted his service to the country and also a decorated combat veteran. It doesn't matter to this president whether you're a Gold Star mother. He will go after you if you stand up in any way to his misconduct. Well, I'm going to keep on doing my job. I just wish that he would do his. I wish this wasn't necessary, and yes, I look forward to when it's over. But at the end of the day, I'm going to do what I feel I must to fulfill my oath and to make sure that we protect the health of our democracy.
Congressman Adam Schiff, Democrat of Burbank, thank you for taking the time.